Hello, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. As always, it's great to have you here. So today's video is part 3 in preparation for my solo show, which took place in June of 2022. And this piece is titled 100 Years. And honestly, I can't think of a more appropriate title, because I felt like it took 100 years to make this painting. So if you watch my channel, by now you should know my approach for painting most landscapes. And while there are some exceptions, I typically start with what's furthest back in the distance and then make my way forwards. So for these mountains that are furthest back in the distance, I decided to break them down into 3 layers. First, putting down the midtones that I saw in the rocks, followed by the highlights and shadows of those rocks, and then lastly, putting down the colors of the snow. And this is more or less how I decided to tackle each section of this landscape. It's honestly really helpful for me to identify a midtone in a particular section and get that down first. And from there, I feel like I have something to work off of. But believe me when I tell you, painting this landscape was not for the faint of heart. There were an incredible amount of details to include. All of the rocks and cliffs had so many shadows and textures, including snow and grass at the same time. So I made sure to take my time and really tried to be thoughtful about how I planned out each and every section. And I think what originally drew me to this image was the amount of sheer distance it portrayed. The mountains just seemed to go on forever into the distance. And this is something that I really wanted to portray in the painting to the best of my ability. And while I'm talking about the reference picture, I want to make sure to credit the original photographer who gave me permission to use this image. Nick Moretto is a photographer friend of mine who lives in Denver, Colorado. And he travels all over photographing stunning mountain scenes. And I believe he took this photo while backpacking in the North Cascades. Moving on to the figure, I chose to switch my technique and focus more on gradients as opposed to laying down big sections of midtones. Making these gradients definitely takes longer, but is absolutely worth it to make these smooth transitions. And I really got lucky in the fact that the blanket that she has draped around her really nicely matches the tones and colors of the grass and rock that surround her. And in particular, while I was painting her back, I was really focused on the shapes that are created by the highlights and shadows. These subtle shapes can portray the curvature of muscle really nicely. And in tackling her hair, I made a gradient from light to dark according to the light source, and then later adding those little hair strands using those same exact colors. And when I'm painting faces, I always make sure that I have an accurate and proportional sketch even before I put paint down. Having this sketch reassures me that everything is in its right spot and I can just focus on painting. So in this section, I'm really just focused on the shadows and highlights and how everything blends together. And when illustrating faces in any medium, no matter how good you are, something is always going to be a little off. So please don't panic. And don't be afraid to make little adjustments or even start over if you really need to. So while I paint the final components of this piece, I want to talk about the meaning behind it. So even before I started this painting, I was thinking about the idea of time. And I was wondering how much more humans would learn and develop if we lived even longer lives. So when I was painting this piece, I envisioned this person sitting peacefully in this exact spot for 100 years, meditating on the life that she's lived so far, and finding peace within herself. And in finding this peace, she begins to merge with the nature around her, blending with the plants and rocks as time fades away. So I hope you enjoyed seeing how I made this piece. This painting definitely jumped over the 100-hour mark, and in my opinion, those hours were definitely worth it. For me, this piece was the accumulation of all of my skill and creativity in one painting. And while I've continued to progress since this painting, I do feel like it serves as a landmark for me personally. As a reminder that I can overcome even the most difficult of obstacles with patience and dedication. And as of the recording of this video, this painting is still available for purchase from Abend Gallery. So if you are interested, you can use the link in my description to view the entire show on the Abend website. Or you can visit austinhowlett.com to view prints of all of my solo show paintings, as well as other available paintings. Thank you so much for watching, I really appreciate it, and I will see you next time.